Now we're going to transition to the residency panel Q&A. First, we're going to introduce all the panelists, and then we'll go into some questions that were submitted. If there's extra time at the end, we'll open it up to questions from everyone. So first off, I'd like to introduce Dr. Truong. She is a recent graduate from Kingman Emergency Medicine Residency Program and now works as their medical clerkship director. She also has the joy of working alongside her husband at Kingman Regional Medical Center.
Hi guys, thanks for having us. Thank you, Dr. Shaw, for speaking to. That was actually a really great recap. I think that's all the information you gave was pretty important for the students to hear, and even for myself as a recent graduate, that was pretty encouraging. So thank you. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Hi everybody, I'm Veronica. I'm a third year at Creighton and I'm the vice chair of the council. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Waterbrook. She is the APD for UA South. She did her MD at the U of A and then did her residency in Maine and then did a sports medicine fellowship at the U of A as well. She's also the director for the Sports Med Fellowship at the U of A, and she takes care of athletes on and off the field as a U of A team physician. So thank you for coming, Dr. Waterbrook.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. Dr. Lisa Stone King is the program director, but as you said, I'm the associate program director for our South Campus program at the University of Arizona. And then also, as was mentioned, I'm the associate program director for our sports medicine fellowship, of which Dr. Shaw is a former graduate. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Hey, y'all. My name is Aubrey. I'm a third year from ASCOM, and I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Fiorello. He is the program director for U of A University campus. Dr. Fiorello grew up and went to college and med school in Buffalo, New York, before making the great trek across country to join University of Arizona for residency. He formerly served in the Commissioned Corps for the Indian Health Services in Arizona before returning to academic medicine at the U of A in Tucson. His special interests in emergency medicine include point-of-care ultrasound, sepsis, medical education, and risk management. We're so happy to have you, Dr. Fiorello.
Thanks for having me. I think this is a great opportunity to talk to all of you guys. And thank you, Dr. Shaw, for a very interesting introduction. I can't echo more his feeling that everyone needs to get involved, probably more now than ever. I've participated in some of the Doc on the Hill days, and it is eye-opening what some of our legislators, the decisions they make, and how little they know about our world. So definitely get involved.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan. I'm a third year at ATSU SOMA, and we should be getting him pinned presently, but I'm proud to introduce Dr. Leetch from UAEM Peds. He's probably the most wild of all the cats here. He's a UA native, UA Med, and then UA Residency. And he's the PD for the U of A combined EM and Peds 5-year program, as well as the creator host of the very cool, very informative Arizona MCAST, which is a competitive EM podcast.
Hi, Morgan. Thank you very much for having me. Sorry I had to step out. I double booked myself a little bit, but I'm all yours now. So very nice of you to set this up. I really appreciate it.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Chris. I am the secretary on the council. Thanks, everyone, for showing up. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend and mentor, Dr. Geoff. He's one of the APDs at the Creighton Maricopa Emergency Medicine Residency Program. He's originally from Arizona, graduated from U of A, undergraduate, went to med school in Kansas City, and then did his EM residency in Columbus, Ohio. In addition to being an APD, he's also trained in wilderness medicine, fellowship trained, and does a lot with the Med War races. I think you write content for something like 6 of the races across the nation, something awesome like that. Previously, he served as the chair of the EMRA Wilderness Medicine Committee and has been on the executive board as well, and has received some teaching awards in the past. So we're very glad to have Dr. Comp here. And I believe we also have Dr. Thomas Whiting, who is one of the co-clerkship directors for UA Comp at Creighton. And I believe you just finished recently your ultrasound fellowship as well. So congratulations on that, Dr. Whiting, and thank you for being here.
All right, so I think we're set to get started here. I'm Grace. I'm a third year at Creighton, and I am the Creighton representative to the council. Just before we get started, just a quick reminder to the PDs and APDs, if you can try and keep your answers around like 2 minutes, that would be really helpful just to kind of keep us on track throughout this whole thing. But we'll kind of go round robin style. Whoever wants to jump in first to answer, you're more than welcome to. Just unmute yourself. So the first question we're going to start with is, what makes your program unique, and how would you describe your program's culture?
I am happy to kick this one off. So I think something that I really like about our program is specifically we have some curriculum benefits as well as our sort of wellness and personality benefits. So just briefly through our curriculum, we rotate all through Phoenix. And I think that's a really great opportunity. People are going to start at our sort of traditional county-based shop. We go to large academic facilities. We go to smaller community centers, and that's from Peds to all of our other rotations that we do as well. EM, we're the Arizona Burn Center too. So we have a lot of really unique educational opportunities, and you really get a good flavor for emergency medicine at multiple different levels of practice. We also offer 3 electives, 1 in each year, which is something that's a little bit unique to some programs to really let you kind of really sink your teeth into different types of the specialty that you might want to get a little bit more involved with. And then finally, I think something that each one of us is going to talk about is the people. I am an emergency medicine physician because of the people. We work on building a family, on building a community, and that is top down as well as bottom up. We really feel that multi-level mentorship is really, really important, as well as coaching throughout the different years, attending down, as well as, frankly, residents up. The wellness initiatives, as well as support that we really try to focus and promote are huge. I go to work with my friends, and that's, again, residents to attendings to frankly med students. And that's why I work where I work.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you can go.
No, go ahead.
So sorry, I'm lucky because I trained in Kingman, and then having now worked with the program over the last year, I've seen a lot of things change. But one of the things that I didn't realize that I was so lucky to kind of be a part of as a resident was that our program leadership kind of recognizes that with EM, and especially with COVID the last year, burnout is kind of a real thing in EM. So what they want to do is make sure that the residents are all very supported in any kind of like niches they might have. So we have a small residency group. We have 6 residents per year, so 18 total since we have a 3-year program. And so between our leadership, everybody kind of has their own interests. So we've got our EMS director, wilderness director, ultrasound, things like that. And so our residents are pretty supported in any specific interest that they have. We are a smaller kind of rural setting. So we're in northern Arizona. It's maybe a collective population of 30,000 in the surrounding community. So we have 1 hospital. We don't have a lot of rotations nearby for them. We do send our residents to Phoenix and Las Vegas for pediatrics, trauma, things like that. But if our residents are interested in anything, say, they really do want to pursue ultrasound or wilderness, our leadership is really good about making sure we provide them with opportunities like that. We provide them with elective time. If there's any advanced courses they want to go to, we make sure that they've got the time off to do that, financial support. And so our program is pretty unique in that with a small group of residents and pretty involved faculty, we make sure that we support any kind of interest that they have. And we give them a lot of autonomy too throughout their residency training to kind of become the type of physician that they think they're going to be later on. Our attendings are always there to help, but pretty hands-off with the residents too, so that they can kind of develop their own style and interests. And like I said, the goal is for them when they do graduate to be sure that they're not burnt out already, right? They've got some interest later on and down the line, and in 10 years, they've set themselves up to be kind of the physician they want to be and happy where they're at.
I'll kick off the Tucson part of this. So Tucson's a little unique in that we have 3 training programs here. We have our Tucson, what we call our university campus or Tucson campus program, the South Campus program, and then our combined program. So we're one large EM family that three smaller little families, I guess, if you will. You'll find that no matter where you go, EM's friendly. We're a group of people, I think, in general that understand work-life balance and that the life part of it's really important. And we're a relaxed group, I think. Everyone's on a first name basis. It's a fun place to work, but we still are the product in the end, whether it's patient care or education or research, you know, we really want all to be top notch, even though we're kind of relaxed in our approach to it. But we have these three different programs, the university campus programs, the larger with 15 residents per class. But we have now, what is it, 79 total residents, I think, EM among the three programs here. So a little bit different than most places that you'll go, that we have three different, completely, you know, although we all work together, each program has its kind of its own little personality, different didactics, different clinical rotations, but all one bigger part of a big EM family down here with pushing, I think now 70 clinical faculty. So just about no matter what interest area you have in emergency medicine, there are people here that share that interest, which I think is important.
Yeah, so just to maybe piggyback a little bit on what Al was saying, you know, I think the thing that's cool about here in Tucson is, like he was saying, is that we have we're one big department, but we are three separate programs, all with our own mission and vision, fit and feel. But we all really work together. I mean, the South Campus program is a newer program. And I remember when we first started it, I thought, oh, you know, you know, how is this going to work with, you know, two different programs in the same place? But I think that they're really complementary. Oftentimes, you know, residents are friends, you know, it's not like just the South Campus residents hang out with South Campus and University Campus hang out with University Campus. You know, it really is one big family. And I think the cool thing is that you've got two different programs, but you've got the resources of a big department, and we share resources. So for example, fellowship opportunities, whether it's based at South Campus or University Campus, you know, residents from either program have equal access to. You know, the South Campus program, we started at what used to be Keno Hospital, which is now called South Campus, but it was basically the old county hospital. And while it is, you know, part of the university system now, it's still, you know, remains the hospital for a lot of our sort of lower socioeconomic population. And so that's kind of our mission and vision, is that we really focus on the underserved populations, rural populations. We have electives both in rural medicine as well as in global medicine that you're allowed to do during your third year. We also incorporate Spanish into our didactics so that you're able to, you know, learn medical Spanish during the 3-year course that you're here. And one thing that's really cool is that we've partnered with the interpreters, and we have in-person interpreters. I mean, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, basically. I don't know if they've expanded that recently, but, you know, you're also able to practice your Spanish on a daily basis working with your patients. It's not like you just do that on an elective. So, you know, lots of really cool opportunities, you know, whether your interest is mostly, you know, rural health or border health, there's lots of different opportunities to explore that in our program.
And I guess I'll round out Tucson. So our program is very unique. It's a combined program, and you'll find that there's actually several of these combined training programs that mix together with emergency medicine. We find that emergency medicine has almost become its own vein of primary care in a lot of ways, or its own vein of a general type of training that people will butt off and do fellowships and can actually find some go-betweens with combined programs. So there's combined emergency medicine and internal medicine. There's combined emergency medicine and family medicine. And then there's our program, which is combined emergency medicine and pediatrics. And one of the things that I usually do to describe our program is saying that it's not an emergency doctor that likes kids, and it's not a pediatrician that likes just when things go wrong. It's really someone who wants to do 100% emergency medicine and 100% pediatrics. They want to do both. They want the training that encompasses both. What our grads will typically end up doing is working in the emergency department, but taking care of adults, working in a Peds emergency department. Many of them will do hospitalist or clinic shifts on the pediatric side. A surprising amount of our grads have actually gone on to do fellowships in both emergency medicine and in pediatrics, ultrasound, pediatric critical care, sports medicine, medical education simulation, toxicology. And it just provides a very different approach than doing either pediatrics and a fellowship or emergency medicine and a fellowship. The reason why this seems to work well for us is because we have a lot of go-between between the two programs. I think our PEDS is it's certainly my favorite place because that's what I like to do, but it's a place that can be fraught with a lot of uncertainty, as children, or sick children especially, are something that a lot of pediatricians and emergency doctors aren't very fond of. But we make it work well because our residents work on both sides. Our faculty have all worked well on both sides. And I find that it's just a very unique perspective. The pediatricians and the emergency doctors we work with will very quickly say that we speak emergency medicine, understand emergency medicine, work emergency medicine, and we also speak pediatric, and we understand the pediatric side of things. It's certainly not a program that's for everybody, but for those interested in pediatric emergency medicine as a career, it's one of the 3 pathways to get there, and it's just a little bit different. So usually I like to do, if you're interested in this program, I like to do a little bit of career counseling for you and make sure that this is actually going to get you the job you want, it's going to get you the scope of practice you want and the geography that you want. But it's a great program that's been around since 2004. There's 3 other programs like us in Indiana, Maryland, and Louisiana. It's really a unique exposure to both sides that helps you to draw from both aspects and really take excellent care of kids in the emergency department as well as adults.
Thank you all for your really wonderful responses. I'm having a hard time picking one as a favorite because you all are so unique. Our next question for the panel is, in light of COVID and all things being virtual, what is something about your program that students cannot find on your website?
I can probably talk for all of us in that you just really don't get the feel of a program unless you're there. You can't get the feel of the residents and how they interact and the faculty resident interactions. You just can't see that online. And unfortunately this year, because of the limited rotations and stuff because of COVID, people haven't been able to experience that in person either. But that would be what I would say is you just can't see that online.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one of the hardest things, right? I mean, I think all of us always really enjoy the recruitment season to be able to see you guys and have you come in and really explore and experience who we are as a family and what the department's like and what it's like to hang out and spend time with us. I mean, if I can try to find a glass half full sort of answer, I mean, it has sort of allowed us to explore some new ways that we can try to do this. So a lot of us did virtual information sessions. We have open virtual didactics and journal clubs, but it's still, it's just not the same. But that is, I completely agree with you, Doc. That's exactly what I'm missing the most.
I'll kind of say for the Tucson programs, one of the things that really doesn't come across well is kind of what Dr. Waterbrook alluded to already, is just how well the residents actually work well together. Especially in our program where Dr. Fiorello mentioned the uniqueness of having 3 programs under one roof, and how the different programs can produce very similarly trained residents, but with a different kind of flair for certain areas, a different understanding of certain areas, a different focus in areas, but all really, great emergency doctors that can go and take care of anything that comes in and can resuscitate a rock and really just take care of everyone that walks through the door. I think that interplay is something that you have to see to really believe, and you have to come down and actually rotate with us, interview with us, kind of see the hospital to see what it looks like. The biggest thing that is difficult to take away, maybe not from all of you, because you're Arizona kind of centric, but is this back here, like how beautiful Arizona is, especially if you've never been to Tucson. And I grew up in Phoenix, and I still have family in Phoenix, and I love being up in Phoenix, but Tucson is now my home. And without disparaging Phoenix, I just love Tucson. It's such a nice place to be. And it's such a different entity than Phoenix that I told a lot of the people when they came down for interviews, that if you've been to Phoenix, you haven't really been to Tucson. It's not quite the same. And they have their different strengths and different things that are unique about them. So if you've never been to Tucson, you should really come down.
Yeah, and I would echo what everybody said. And just to piggyback also a little bit on Dr. Leetch, I think, you know, definitely the people, the fit and feel of the different programs, right? Because I always say that if you go to an accredited EM program, you are going to get a good education. You are going to be a good EM doc. And so really it's about the fit and feel of each program, and it's hard to do that. I mean, we tried to replicate it, you know, the best we could over Zoom, but it's absolutely not the same at all. I think I'm speaking to the choir here, but I do think another thing we sort of missed out on during interview season is I feel like Arizona sort of hits the jackpot during interview season because our weather is so nice. It's like some of the best weather of the entire year, right? Where it's also some of the crappiest weather other places. And so, you know, people come here and they're like, wow, this is great. I have to say, you know, it does get hot in the summertime. But, you know, I feel like you sort of got to see that to believe it too during that time, especially if you're from the East Coast where, you know, there's lots of snow and cold weather.
I came from Buffalo, and I quickly decided snows to visit, never to shovel ever again in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard for me to tell the people that come from the Midwest, like, hey, you guys realize life doesn't have to be like that, right? Like you can come here and it's it looks like this. Like this is what we have.
Anything special about Kingman, Dr. Truong?
No, I agree with what everybody said. It's so hard to replicate this. I think COVID was a scary time for everybody, especially students, but even I remember at the very beginning with residents too, there was talk at our program, and I don't know how many other programs, of like, you know, intubating these COVID patients, like maybe not letting the interns do it right away. And I think after like a week, we were like, that's silly. Like these residents are training to become doctors during COVID. They need to get, you know, hands-on experience. And so when we actually did start letting students come back and rotate, we kind of had the same mentality. We wanted them to have every opportunity to train because in just a few months, you know, they were going to be hands-on in this. And so as long as everybody had PPE and was wearing it appropriately, we let students get as involved as possible. And those are things that you just can't replicate during virtual like Zoom training and lectures. So Kingman was no different from you guys. We missed having the students there and having them interact and see how they do as part of the team. So I'm glad they're back, but that was a rough time there for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you for all of your responses to that question. Next up is, what are some qualities that your programs look for in an applicant, especially those applicants that you end up ranking at the high end of your rank list?
I could take this one first because mine is very unique. I need above all else to know that you are interested in really doing both programs. At the end of the day, I have to convince Dr. Fiorello that this candidate is going to be an excellent emergency doctor. And I have to convince Dr. Frankie, our Peds program director, that they're also going to be an excellent pediatrician. The best way to put that across is in your personal statement. And that is far and away 1, 2, and 3, the most important things for my program. And that's unique to everybody. So, you know, you can express that as best as you can through your personal statement. And I think that shines, and maybe your letters of recommendation as well. But I think that shines through quite a bit.
I can go next. I think the, you know, for us, we have, you know, EM is a really competitive field, and we have a lot of great applicants. You know, by the time you guys have gotten to the interview or even rotating with us, you are smart, you are capable. We know that. It's really goes back to what we were talking about before. I think it's really about the fit and feel, and we want people here who want to be here. It makes you better residents. I think it makes your education better. You know, we always talk about sort of the night shift test. You know, is this somebody we want to have on a night shift with us? And, you know, in my opinion, what makes the best resident is not necessarily the smartest person out there, but somebody who, like I said, wants to be here, is a team player, who wants to learn, who wants to be involved in their residency program, and make it a better place. I really think that's, you know, over the years, the best residents, like I said, are not necessarily the smartest ones, but the ones who are here to work hard and learn and be the best doc they can. And so that's what we look for.
I agree. We also look for people that want to be here. I mean, everyone on this call kind of has a leg up because, you know, Arizona. If you're a resident if you're a med student that's looking for an LA, a Chicago, New York City, Tucson's not the place for you. But we want people to be happy here, and potentially even stay in Arizona or Tucson for their careers. We also look for self-directed learners. We're not a big hand-holding program. We don't tell you need to go read, you know, pages 42 through 83 in Tinton Alley tonight. We provide you with all the resources you need, but look for people that, you know, by the time you make it to residency, I think everyone knows how they learn best. And we look for people that kind of are more self-directed learners.
I agree with especially the fit part of the discussion. I think something else to bring up for us is that we really are looking for leaders both professionally and personally. So we really like seeing, hey, you know, here's something that that the applicant has done within school leadership, within the specialty, but also, hey, if you were a basketball coach throughout med school, I want to hear about that. I want to hear about how you were a waiter and put yourself all the way through high school and undergrad, doing some other types of jobs. You know, we have a very strong program, but we also have a program that really focuses on allowing you to find what you like within emergency medicine, taking it and running with it. And sometimes that means coming up to leadership and saying, hey, you know, I'm really interested in this specific area. Can we help write a new interest track? Hey, can I help write my own elective? And some of that takes a little bit of that go get them kind of attitude. That's one of the other big things that we really look for, and try to tease out, just like Dr. Leetch was talking about in your personal statement, but also as a description in the activities and other tangibles that you have in your application.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. Fit is such a big part of the program, but we look for individuals who are, I guess I should say, like well-rounded, and there's probably not a great singular definition for what that is, but some of the best advice I ever got was when I was at pre-med training. Somebody said to me, patients come from everywhere and their doctors should too. And so we look for a lot of people who have kind of just like a breadth of experience, and maybe that doesn't mean time-wise or like previous jobs, but ER can be tough, right? It can be stressful. And so we want individuals who are versatile and can kind of roll with the punches, because every shift, every patient encounter every day is going to be a little different. And so, you know, do you have some previous life experience that has taught you to be calm in the face of stress? Do you have previous life experience? You know, do you have a lot of kids and you can handle pediatric patients? And so we look for people who are kind of just well-rounded. And even if they're not, we look for people that are open to learning these new things, right? We want to see that people are here to get the most out of their residency, and hopefully they've got some background that'll help them, you know, kind of get through this easily.
I kind of want to reiterate what Dr. Waterbrook said. She said, you know, sometimes the smartest people do not necessarily become the best residents or even the best doctors, because there's so much else that goes along with that, of actually being personable and, you know, having compassion and having a work ethic that really means a lot. So, you know, I'll kind of address some of the elephant in the room that's always there, of like board scores. Well, what if my board scores aren't good enough? Well, board scores is one aspect of a holistic application that we all look at. So if you do great on your board scores, that's awesome. If not, then that's something else you have to talk about. But if you do great on your board scores and your letters of recommendation don't really describe someone who has work ethic and who cares about their team members and such, or that comes across in an interview, then the board scores don't matter as much. So there was a lot that used to be placed on board scores, and you know, people ask about cutoffs, and you know, that has really become more of a just another aspect that we look at. It's not the only thing. We want you to do well. We want to know that you can do well for tests and that you can pass your boards at some point, especially for me, looking at having you pass 2 boards, pediatrics and emergency medicine. But I do not let board scores be a deterrent, especially for applying.
Thank you, Dr. Leetch, for addressing the elephant in the room. Our next question is, what steps is your program taking to ensure your senior residents have job security in light of ACEP's recent statement regarding the job market?
I can start with this one. So I've come to realize over the last, so I did a 4-year program. Our program's 3 years now, but kind of EM is a small community going to the same like conferences over and over again. You see the same people over and over again. And then for our program, like I said, we have a small group of residents and we have a small group of faculty and leadership who is very dedicated, and our faculty and leadership kind of came from all over. So they have, you know, quite a bit of connections to different programs and, you know, job groups and things like that. And so watching our current graduating residents kind of look for jobs this year was a little bit scary, but what I saw was that there are tons of jobs out there still for them. Sometimes it just does depend on where they want to end up, right? Where they want to live, what kind of job they want, community, rural, nights, days, things like that. And so our leadership's always really supportive as far as like writing letters, making phone calls, reviewing contracts for them, right? Talking to them about their experiences with, you know, big groups and employment before coming to Kingman and things like that. So all of our residents thankfully have jobs already and have signed and are looking at houses and getting ready to move. So we thought that was really important to make sure that our graduating class got jobs. And so we got that taken care of.
This year was a bit different because of COVID and, you know, the furloughs and cutbacks, and groups were hesitant to hire on new people, not knowing what tomorrow holds. Our volumes are back. This isn't going to be like this forever.
In a big way.
I walked into a waiting room of 40 people the other day. So emergency medicine's always going to, there's going to be jobs out there, so I wouldn't get totally scared of that. There are some challenges. There are more graduates. There are more APPs in the world now that are working in emergency departments, but you know, there'll be jobs out there. And if you want to do something a little bit different, most people want to work in urban, suburban areas. There's tons of rural emergency medicine jobs. I did it for 4 years, and it's extremely gratifying. I loved my time kind of in the rural world. So there are jobs out there, definitely. I think we're kind of fortunate here in that we're a program that's been around since the mid-'80s. We have over 350 APDs grads out there. So our family tree is huge, which makes it a little bit easier for our graduating residents to look for jobs, because they kind of pick on the family tree a little bit. And we have grads that call us that say, you know, it looks like we're going to have something opening up this year. Do you have anyone that may want to come to Boise? So it's kind of fortunate for us.
And I would also say that, you know, we have you know, longevity, but also our the 3 programs combined, both in terms of graduates and faculty, is also super large. So there's definitely a lot of connections there that we're able to get everybody, you know, people in contact with, whether or not you end up, you know, wanting to stay in the same place where you do your residency, or you want to be going, or you want to go elsewhere. And this isn't the exact question that was asked, but I have a lot of students ask me each year, like, well, I've always been told that I should, you know, I should find a residency in the place where I, you know, want to live, because that's where most people get jobs afterwards. And I would say you don't necessarily need to do that at all. I think a lot of people go to residency in the place where they want to settle down for various reasons, but it's not because you can't get a job other places, especially if you go to a program with a lot of connections. You really, you know, honestly, I think all 3 of the programs here in Tucson really, because of our connections and because of the education, really do set you up to be able to go anywhere you want after residency, whether that is staying in Arizona, doing, you know, a more urban or rural practice, or going somewhere else if that's what you want to do.
I totally agree. I think the national network that's developed from the program, as well as frankly the national mentorship that people are able to sort of cultivate and develop throughout their time as a resident is huge. We also really work on job fit exploration. So a lot of discussions early on of frankly what you want your life to look like as a physician when you graduate. Are you thinking that you want to work at a smaller location? Are you thinking that you want to work at a larger location? Have you thought about fellowships? Really working on sort of this personal optimization as well as coaching on how to strategically apply, I think is something that we've been doing. And I think it really ramped up this year. Like a lot of very targeted conversations with a lot of our seniors, and frankly, even starting now with some of our twos to have some of these hard conversations. And it's a little bit of a shock to the system when they say, well, hey, have you thought about what's going to be coming on over the horizon? They're like, man, I just started my my second year. I'm in the middle of my second year. What do you mean? Do I'm thinking about it? But when you actually start thinking early on, you can really start to set yourself up for success. And I think that's something that we've really been focusing on throughout this application cycle, and we will in the future too.
Yeah, I start career counseling with my residents kind of, you know, the first 6 months of their intern year. Our program is 5 years long, so that you can do 2 3-year residencies, pediatrics or emergency medicine. You do them both sequentially. They kind of trade off and on. Every couple months, you'll switch back and forth from emergency medicine to pediatrics, and you do that for a total of 5 years. And there's enough overlap that you cut a year out. So a lot of people say, well, you know, it's 5 years away. That's so far away. I'm like, it's not that far away. You start planning on some of this stuff now. And my, you know, plea to the interns when they start is, you know, where do you want to work? What do you want to do? Who do I need to meet so that I can get you that job? Who do you need to meet so that you can get that job? We've had residents come in to our Peds program that from day one of internship, they said, I'm already signing with this group out in Boise. I already know that for sure. I've been talking to them, and I was like, all right, great. Well, that makes that a whole lot easier. But then there are residents that still say, oh, I'm not quite sure. I get asked a lot, well, does that dual training, you know, help you get a job compared to somebody who has done only one? I think it adds a uniqueness, but I think much like anything you'll put on your application for residency, people can see what you've done to check a box versus what you are truly passionate about. So I think one of the positive things, because we're trying to put a positive spin on a lot of stuff from this past year, COVID and everything else, looking for some of the good stuff. One of the positive things is I think it's made a lot of people reevaluate, why do they want to do emergency medicine? If it's just for the lifestyle, then there's plenty of other things that have a better lifestyle. If it's because they like doing procedures, well, anesthesia has that as well. You know, like there are other things that can get to this. What is it you really like about emergency medicine? And I think when it comes down to it, if that's what you want to do for your career, then there are hundreds and hundreds of emergency departments out there that do not have enough board certified emergency physicians working there, and they will hire. But they may not be in the markets that everybody wants to go to. There already are lots of markets that are saturated. The one closest to us I can think of is San Diego, where a lot of grads want to live in San Diego and they're willing to commute to kind of outlying cities. And so the jobs are there, but the jobs may not be in the exact places that you want to live in. They won't be down the street per se. This is the first time, and with academic jobs, it's a little bit of the same. This is the first time in years that we have not had any departures and we haven't been able to hire somebody else. But we don't see that continuing. We see emergency medicine continuing to progress and continuing to grow. We see people starting to step out of positions or retire and new positions open up. So I think I don't think it's going to be gridlocked in 10 years, but I also think it's going to be a different landscape than it is right now.
It was mentioned earlier, you know, you can do things outside of emergency medicine. You know, over my career, I've seen way more people do fellowships. There's so many more different fellowships out there in EM than there were when I first started. And, you know, we have people that do sports medicine that then do part-time practice in the sports world and part-time practice in the ED. We have people that have done critical care that share their time between the ED and the ICU. So I think there's a lot more opportunities to do things other than just straight emergency medicine shifts today than there was 10, 15 years ago.
I'm pretty sure one of our graduates does exclusively Botox now, but
it's regenerative medicine.
No, totally different.
Regenerating the forehead.
Yeah. And just to circle back around on this question, you know, in terms of like what does our program do specifically, you know, besides our network, like everybody talked about, we do counseling from the very beginning. We have a faculty development series as part of our didactics that we, you know, discuss finding a job as well as other aspects like financial wellness series. And then, you know, we also have mentor-mentee meetings, a minimum biannually, but oftentimes more often than that, to talk about, you know, these types of issues. So, you know, lots of mentorship on multiple different levels, you know, pretty much from day one.
Incredible. Well, it was very reassuring that we can all be pursuing our dreams and have a job at the end of the day. So thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to our next question, and that is, how does your program support individuals' unique needs, specifically in regards to families, mental health, religion, gender identity, culture, etc.?
I'll take a mental health part of it from Tucson. We're extremely fortunate to be kind of paired up with the University of Arizona here as our sponsoring institution, and we have a phenomenal mental health services program, kind of one of the model programs, I think, in the country. The ACGME surveys residency programs every year, and for the institution this year, something like 99% of the residents ranked our mental health services as like the best that it could be. We have a couple psychiatrists that are dedicated just solely to the residents here. We have kind of a social work trained coordinator for it, and it's really strong. This has been an extremely stressful year for everybody, and I think that here at least has been something that's been supported extremely well from the College of Medicine side of things.
I can go ahead and take the supportive family, since I myself have 4 young kids, and our program director, Dr. Stone King, has 2 kids herself. We try, you know, we really emphasize that this is a family-friendly community, whatever family is to you, whether you have too many kids like me, or, you know, your family is your dog or your significant other, or, you know, whatever that means to you. And so, for example, you know, in non-COVID times, you know, we would have lots of activities outside of residency with faculty and residents, and we always made it family friendly. You know, I totally get that work-life balance is hard, especially as a resident. And so we don't want you to have to make the choice between, well, do I want to spend, you know, time with my kids or my spouse, or do I want to go and hang out with, you know, my friends from work? And so we try really to be mindful, to be inclusive with what we're doing after work, so that you don't really you don't have to make those types of decisions.
Yeah, I think there are opportunities, frankly, to support wellness, both on shift and off shifts. And I think that's really important. We look at things like the sort of the wellness wheel, with all the different aspects and components that make up someone's personal wellness, making sure that we're addressing a lot of these things. We talked about religion, mental health, cultural ideas, gender identity. We have a really robust D&I community here, and an interest group that's actually been doing a lot of really awesome education. We had a lecture recently on the refugee patient. We're developing now a sort of a primer on how to approach the incarcerated patient. What's the difference between someone that's in prison versus what's in jail? What are some of the rights? What are the things that we want to make sure that we're really addressing? That also sort of goes to our, that sort of, I guess, leads me to our off-shift wellness. we use a lot of texting and like group meet chats to really sort of to allow people to have those experiences. So we have one for water sports, we have a little chat for rock climbing, mountain biking, road biking, and people just say, hey, I'm going to be at this trailhead at this time, hopefully see you guys there. And when we have that kind of support for everyone, and to allow this kind of inclusivity, we have everyone from all levels that show up. That really ultimately ends up to a really great work relationship when you can allow for that kind of incredible development of the personal as well as professional family.
Yeah, wellness is such a large push these days with any residency. And then I think during the COVID era, we saw that depression rates, suicide rates, everything was kind of up. And so our program, what we did, instead of kind of just throwing all these wellness initiatives at our residents, we kind of asked residents what they thought, like what they were struggling with, what they were suffering with, what they thought would make them well, or what they thought, you know, would help them mentally during this time. And so what we noticed is that we actually turn to our hospital community a lot. Kingman is tiny, you know, we just don't have a lot of resources, unfortunately, in the way of even just cultural, you know what I mean? It's a very predominantly Caucasian community and a couple big main religions, but within the hospital community itself, so like the nurses, the other attendings and things like that, our residents are pretty well supported in any kind of, you know, needs that they have. And so our residents are actually pretty able to find like a buddy support system throughout the hospital and not just within the residency. So we felt the best way to support them as a residency and leadership was to just ask them what they wanted and kind of direct them. But they did a good job finding it themselves, you know, just throughout the hospital, the cardiologists, the ICU rotations, they're always able to find somebody that they can relate to for family issues, mental health, religion. And so we encourage our residents to explore that within the hospital. And so they've done pretty well mentally this past year, I think. So.
Yeah, I think the emergency department is just such a melting pot where it doesn't matter what your background is, everybody ends up in the emergency department at some point. And we all have that same level of helplessness of being in the emergency department. And so being emergency physicians and approaching with that level of humility of knowing that there's someone here that I don't know that is putting their trust in me. I mean, that's really how we view residents as well. Of the match is it's a crazy beast. And when you end up matching at a place, you have committed yourself to that place. And, you know, we respect that a lot. And you've committed yourself to be in this place under the apprenticeship, so to speak, of the physicians you're there with. And we know that this is your time to train. And I think our program, because I graduated from the program here before I took over as program director, and the thing that I noticed from being a medical student, which now in program leadership, I'm like, I'd never want this to go away, is that the residents were genuinely happy to be here. In spite of the difficulty of this job. I mean, this job really is difficult. We see a lot of stuff. We do a lot of things. We experience a lot that people don't necessarily understand. I think in this past year, people understand just a little bit more, but not to the same degree. And so that support, that wellness, that having people that have your back, that trying to, you know, bend over backwards for your schedule so that you can figure out how to have a family and still go to work and learn the things you need to know about your patients and fulfill all of your graduation requirements and do those things. I mean, it's our job to get you through this successfully. I know for my program, there's 15 of us of the EM Peds residents. And I reach out to them once a month, especially during COVID, as just kind of an email. You don't have to reply to this, but checking in, hope things are going well. How was anesthesia? Did you get enough tubes? You know, do we need to figure something else out? Or, you know, do you have a great experience? Give me some feedback. Let me know how things are going. But just kind of being present and being there for people. I think our residents especially have the pediatric side that they can reach out to, the emergency medicine side they can reach out to, both of which have DEI champions that are you know, helping with education as well as support for people and trying to get everyone on the same page. I think that having both of those, they can reach out to people in a much broader sense, but then we also have our core group that we know they know they can reach out to from years 1 through 5.
All right, that's really wonderful to hear from all of you. Thank you. Our next question would be, what ways can applicants express interest without being annoying?
So annoying is in the eye of the beholder. I am very annoying to many people. And I think it's silly as it is, just be you. If you are interested in staying in a place, there's no problem with saying, I really like it here. I really want to come to this program. That may not guarantee that you get into that program, but it's sincere and it's genuine. So it's fine to say. If you say that to everybody, that's fine. If you are somebody who writes handwritten thank you notes as a common thing, then do that, you know, but if you are doing it for the very first time, it's when you're doing interviews and stuff, it's not as sincere. It's not the same. So I think that you're at a little bit of a different point now than with medical school, where sometimes you're like, I just need to get into a medical school. But now residency, you're kind of transitioning from being a learner that has some clinical duties to being a physician that has some educational duties. And so you're going to work long hours, a long time with these people. And so if you get the sense that you're not well respected in these places, or that this is not a great fit for you, then it's probably not worth it to go there. I really think you be yourself and you find a place that is a good personal fit for you. And I have no problem when people say, I really like this program, I really want to come here. And you know, and we take that into consideration. I want people that are happy to be here. I don't ever want to match somebody that's like, well, I guess. So be yourself.
Totally agree. Also, sorry. I think, you know, just like Dr. Leetch said, and like we've all sort of alluded to, I think on multiple different levels, right? We want people who want to be here. And there is nothing wrong, you know, with letting programs know that you know, that you want to be there. I think it definitely makes a difference. And like Dr. Leetch said, just be yourself. You know, I don't know that I would, you know, email 10 different programs and say, hey, you're my #1 choice, because that would be disingenuous. But be yourself and be honest. And like I said, let people know that you want to be there, because I think that that's important, and that is something that is taken into consideration.
We have no idea what this year's interview season is going to look like. So we don't really know if people are going to have opportunities to really spend time at places and be able to experience them like they did in years gone by. I would say that trying to feel a place out, go to the source. Try to get hooked up with a resident that you can talk to. And I think if you emailed the program coordinator, program director, and said, hey, I'm really interested in your program, would you mind sending me the name of a resident I could chat with? I think all of us would be happy to pair you up with somebody that you could talk to, and you could really hear from the resident's mouth what they think about the program, and kind of get a little bit more of a feel. Hopefully this year we'll be able to have some in-person stuff, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But at least talking to some of the residents, I think, would be a good thing. As program directors, we all are inundated with emails during interview season. So, you know, I wouldn't be taken back or feel like that we're uninterested if we don't get back to people right away or answer really in-depth questions. I think talking to residents, hopefully they have the same feeling for the programs that we do, but it's probably the more accurate representation of how they feel in the program, talking to them directly.
I think the most important thing with any type of like other correspondence is being genuine and sincere. If you know, if I'm getting an email that is hello person of leadership at, like, clearly insert residency here, in insert city here, I really liked your program, with sort of like a copy and pasted thing from our mission statement or something, we can really all tell, right? But if I get an email that's, hey, you know, Dr. Comp, I grew up in Phoenix and this is where my heart is, and, you know, I've been traveling through the country, but I really want to come back home. Here are the things, you know, that I've been able to really explore. I'm really going to take that into a lot of consideration. and in full transparency, that's probably something that's going to get marked down on our discussion points when you interview. I'm going to say, hey, I really enjoyed that email. You talked about this. Like, tell me where you grew up. That's awesome. Those things really, really do matter. And I think it can be really, really helpful if it's, again, a very genuine and sincere initiation of a conversation.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. That was what was going to be one of my big points, Dr. Comp, was that the disingenuous, like we can definitely tell when residents or med students say that they're just so, they love the program. But one of the things our program recognizes too, and one of our big pushes was that we interviewed a ton of people, right, virtually this season. And we never thought they were annoying when they sent emails, but again, we couldn't get to all of them. But we invited resident or med students to come and see our program, even just for a day, because I was thinking about it. If I was a med student right now applying, would I want to match into a program that I'd never seen before? And so some students thought, hey, was it annoying if I reached out and said, like, I really want to just like come tour the hospital or take a look at the program? That was not annoying at all. We thought that was actually really important. It showed that the med student actually kind of cared about our program. They wanted to give it a second look. You know, it's really important that they kind of see if even just for a day, half a shift, an hour, like, was that fit right for them? And so I don't think that there's a lot that could come off as annoying. I mean, there's definitely some things, but I think being genuine about your interest in a program and going about it the right way that works for you as a student is important. And so keep in mind, this is your future, right? And so if you really do have an interest in a program, finding, you know, the resident or the faculty that'll kind of help get your foot in the door and kind of at least get you the opportunity to see if that program's right for you is super important.
You guys all know Arizona, so it's a little different for you. Maybe some of you haven't been down to Tucson before and may not know Tucson, but I think it is hard to think about going to a program in a city you've never visited before. I can honestly say I wouldn't be here in Tucson today had I not come out to Tucson, because I was from Buffalo, New York. I really never spent any time out here, and came out here. I was like, wow, I love this place. So, you know, I would say, again, we don't really know what the interview season is going to look like, but if you do happen to go scope out of town, like if we're not able to have in-person interviews and things, if you go scope out of town just to see what the town's like, I'd say reach out to the program. We had a few people this year that came to Tucson to see what Tucson was all about, matched a few of them because they like Tucson. And we weren't able to tour them around the hospital because of COVID restrictions and everything, but we got them in contact with some of our residents that were able to go out and have coffee with them and tell them a little bit about the program at Tucson. So I would say if we're not able to have in-person stuff this year, that may be something to consider, especially for places you've really never been to before.
So we kind of all talked about how we really enjoy the sort of the genuine interaction. I think the one thing to be careful of is, while it's very stressful for you guys to match, the match process is a little bit stressful for us too. So if you guys can give us some grace, if we don't respond back, try not to sort of send multiple emails, multiple requests for follow-ups, multiple discussions, because that can get to be a little bit of a, oh man, all right, we'll get there, but I need a little bit of time. So that would be the ask. Is likely you are going to get a response, but the multiple emails sort of following up and trying to initiate a conversation where maybe it just isn't the right time, that might start to get a little bit of a challenge.
And our hands are a little bit tied in the interview process and the match process as well by ERS and ACGME, of that we cannot promise people a position. We can tell you, hey, we really enjoyed meeting you. Good luck to you. And we have to be purposefully vague a lot of times, just simply because of the way the match works and some of the agreements we have. So I have students that have emailed me and said, you're my number one choice. And I think that's great. They felt like they wanted to communicate that. That's awesome. And I used to reply to them, and one of our current residents said, yeah, I got some response. It was super vague. And I was like, well, I'm definitely not matching there, because I had to be vague. And so I explained it to him. And I said, well, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I just shouldn't respond. That's probably, no news is good news kind of thing. So understand when you're trying to communicate with us, I will tell you everything about our program. I will, talk to you about career opportunities and some of the highs and lows of different things. But when it comes to actually the interview and the match process, it is very formalized, and we are kind of held to an agreement that we're not going to promise things. We're not going to make claims that we can't back up because stuff happens sometimes through the match. So don't take silence as lack of interest by any means, because just as program directors, we're held to some of this.
Yeah, so you can tell us, but we can't tell you, basically, is how it works. And then just one other thing that hasn't really been said, it's not a direct, it's an indirect answer to the question in terms of how not to be annoying. One thing is I feel like everybody is on their best behavior during interviews, you know, with the faculty, with the program directors, with the associate program directors, with the residents, but also the residency coordinators are super important. So don't let your guard down around them. You need to also treat them very well and with respect, because we will know if you do not treat them with respect, and that is a big red flag. Another pointer is to get all your paperwork back to them quickly, or on time, because that is something that's a big deal for our coordinators who has lots of paperwork to take care of.
Veronica's our program coordinator, and she has veto power.
Exactly.
That's what I just put in the chat.
Absolutely.
And the reason why they have veto power is because without them, we and you will not make it through residency. Like, they are fundamental. They are the backbone. They are everything that keeps us going and keeps you going. I tell our brand new interns, if you get an email from me or from our program coordinator, ignore me for weeks and do what Veronica tells you to do. She is far more important, and she will make sure that you graduate above me.
That actually really carries well into a follow-up question we have on any pointers of pre-interview season communication, especially with this looming virtual, repeat virtual interview season, and how much weight these pre-interview communications may carry.
I would say take advantage of any of the pre-interview kind of virtual mixer type of things. I think that's an opportunity to learn more than what's on the website, and a lot of times to interact with current residents in the program. So I would say definitely take advantage of those. We did kind of pay attention to who attended those, because it definitely showed an interest above and beyond submitting and clicking a box and submitting an ARIS application.
I totally agree with that. I think that those whether it's in person or virtual, those pre-interview communications are super important, and sort of shows who people are, who's just sort of interviewing to check a box versus who's truly interested in getting to know you, getting to know the residents, etc. I do think it also offers you all more insight into the program and what communications are like outside of the formal interview process.
And you can highlight this in your personal statements too, but sometimes it doesn't show at all in the application, but could in a pre-interview or pre-application email, is if there's something about that program that really draws you to it. I'm not saying just like, again, going back to being genuine, don't pick things off the website and cut and paste them in. But if you grew up in Tucson and you still have family in Tucson, that's an important thing, that you have a social support system here that you may not have elsewhere. So there are some things that may not come across in an application that we may take into consideration. So if you think there's something important about the program you're applying to that really doesn't really show in your application, maybe that is a place where an email to the PD can be helpful.
So kind of moving out of the virtual aspects, what are some qualities that you guys look for in students on their audition rotations?
I can start with this one. So every year we sort of say this, but I think it just kind of needs to be said. Just kind of the basic stuff, making sure that you're on shift, either on time or early. Lateness is, I mean, that's really noted. Making sure that you're nice to everyone. Dr. Fiorello and Dr. Leetch both talked about the importance of the program coordinators, and that goes to the unit secretary, the nursing staff, the techs, the CT techs, the custodial service members. I mean, every single person in the hospital, making sure that you are kind, courteous, and the person that you would want to be an employee with. I think that's one of the basic things. I think the next step and the thing that really will set you apart as a student is really owning your patients. So sometimes something that I see is students really thinking that they want to get a lot of different patients, and you'll get a good HPI, maybe some plan, and then you'll pick up another patient. What I really want to see is you following up and saying, hey, Dr. Comp, I went back and I saw that patient with abdominal pain. Their ultrasound came back. It looks actually okay. Their labs are okay. I'd like to retreat their discomfort. And then I think they can probably go home. How does that sound? That sort of next step in owning of your patients and really recognizing that the disposition is a really important part of the rotation is going to put you head and shoulders above the next person, as well as really developing a plan. I am totally fine if your plan is wrong, right? I would so much rather you say, hey, I'd like to do X, Y, and Z, and for me to say, whoa, no. But then we can actually have a conversation about, well, tell me about your thought process. What were some of the key things that we really keyed on? If you are able to give me that kind of information, rather than what I did when I was a student, and I'll totally own this, where I would give my history and physical, and then I would just kind of trail off and hope that the plan just sort of was formulated by the resident or the attending when I was working with them. It really shows that you're really working on actively changing from just kind of the hunter-gatherer of information to really digesting and thinking about your next steps as you're going to be doing as an intern.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. When I have students rotate with me, I tell them I would much rather have them see fewer patients and do really well with fewer patients than, that being a student is not the time to sort of push yourself to see how many patients in the department you can manage. That will come when you are a resident. There is a time and place for that, but that is not while you're a student, especially not a student who is auditioning. The other thing that I always tell my students that they should, that I want them to know the patient better than me. Like, I want them to have followed up with the labs before I've had time to see the labs myself. I don't want to be reminding people like, hey, did you see these labs? Etc. I think the other thing is, if you're going to spend the time, energy, and money to audition at a place, bring your best game there. That's usually what people do, but I have seen people come and audition and they are clearly disinterested, and then you've really shot yourself in the foot, right? I mean, you can really enhance your application by doing an audition rotation, but you are going to shoot yourself in the foot if you come to do an audition rotation and do, a mediocre job. So bring your A game when you're rotating. And like was said before, remember that sort of everybody, not in a bad way, but everybody is watching you. So don't be mean to the nurses. Don't be mean to the unit assistants. We have an amazing social worker in our emergency department who is, taken me aside in both ways, like, hey, this student is amazing. You need to take this student. Or like, oh my gosh, I saw the student say X, Y, and Z, or I overheard this conversation. They do not belong here. So just remember, but the same principles apply, right? Regardless of where you're at, be honest, be genuine, be interested, be motivated, be a good person. Like that is what we want, whether you're in the emergency department, whether you're a pre-interview dinner, I think at the end of the day, be a good, honest, genuine human being, and that will carry you far at this stage of the game, as well as in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. All those things are true. In Kingman, we look for students that, at least have some kind of baseline medical knowledge, because as it's been said before, as a resident, wherever you go, you're going to get a good training. You're going to become an emergency medicine physician. You're going to learn the medicine, but there's certain things that, might be a little harder to teach. So we want to look at, do you interact well in a team setting, right? Are you a team player? When you're the med student in there, if you're asked to do even the smallest task, are you going to be upset by that? Or are you going to jump right in? I also think professionalism is super important, because sometimes that is just one of those things that you can't teach. And like people have said before, that's definitely something we can tell if you're faking. And since we do have a smaller hospital, we do get feedback from everybody also. You know, if you're taking EMS report from a patient and you're not nice to them, we're going to hear about it. And so being genuine. And then I think, like Dr. Comp was saying too, with the plans and presentations, I think a tight presentation can actually be really impressive. You know, just hitting the pertinent positives and negatives in your presentation and having your differential in your plan and what you want to do with a patient can be really important. And maybe that's not the best quality about the student at the beginning of the rotation, but also improvement, right? Did they take feedback throughout the month and take that feedback and work on it and show us that they could change at the end of the month? Did they ask for feedback? I tell med students when they start to, every resident and attending is a little different. And so you should set some expectations and guidelines at the beginning of your shift, right? You just tell your resident or your attending, what do you expect from me today? You know, or, hey, I'm weak on this. I'd like to work on this today. Or at the end of the shift, say, how did I do? You know, what can I work on for tomorrow? Or things like that. You know, a student that shows initiative and wants to improve and is teachable and takes feedback is something that we really look for, because like I said, you can't teach some of those things. We've had students come in and I don't care. Even as a resident, if I knew I was right, I was not arguing with an attending. And as a med student, I don't think that you should either. Or I've had med students where I've told them like, oh, okay, well, you're wrong, you know, like in the nicest way, like, oh, that's actually incorrect. And they have reacted unfavorably. And I'm sorry, that shows that you don't take feedback well, and you're not always going to be right. And we aren't either. And we're all part of a team. And so I think if you're not willing to take the steps and learn and be humble and want to improve, then those are red flags that we don't like. So just keep your mind open that, you know, you're starting out your career, your medical journey, and we all have room for improvement and to learn. And you should be open to that while you're a student on audition.
I think getting to know the residents is important, again, because you get to know the feel, but don't get to know them too well. We've had a few instances of where students have joined the residents for Whiskey Wednesdays at Union and kind of fall down drunk at Whiskey Wednesdays, and we hear about it and it's like, oh, I don't know about this. So be a little careful with that kind of stuff.
We the thing about doing an audition rotation is that you're here for a month, and it's hard to fake anything for a month. And you know, like Al said, we've had students come through who are yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. You get them out to Whiskey Wednesday and they're no longer yes sir, no ma'am. It was you know, the real person comes out, and that's fine. Like there are times you do need to be your best self. Like you don't need to be someone else, but you need to be your best self, because you want to show people what you are at your best. We all have days where we are at our worst. I had an undergrad rotate with me, just kind of, you know, shadowing, deciding if she wanted to do medicine on one of my worst days ever. And I had to apologize for the way that I acted and, you know, say this is not right. And this is what, you know, but that was my worst. And so you want to show your best so that when you are at your worst, when we all have bad days, we know, well, I know that at their core, you know, this is who they are and they must be having a hard time. I think a couple other things to be is adaptable. Hey, my schedule didn't work out the way that I wanted to. Hey, you know, that attending wanted to do it differently than the attending I just talked to. Like all of these, like being adaptable is a big deal. I think being able to tell sick versus not sick is something that would be ideal if you're able to do it. Sometimes that's hard, and that's why we take the entire residency to really make sure you know sick versus not sick. But if you recognize someone is sick and you go, you know what, I'll be right back, I got to go get somebody, that means a lot to me, that you could actually recognize this person needs intervention right now. And then one of the things we talk about in medical education is the RIME mnemonic. It's R-I-M-E. So it's the stages of a learner. You start as a reporter, where you go and take an entire medicine H&P and you just regurgitate it back out. Then you become an interpreter for the I, which is you take that knowledge. You don't tell me absolutely everything, but you only tell me what's pertinent. And then you progress on to be a manager, of where you take that information, you do something with it, and then you report back, you're taking care of the situation. Eventually you're become an educator, you teach other people. I think that What we would hope for as an audition rotation is more of an interpreter role. You know, we don't want you to come back and tell us everything the patient told you and have it perfectly laid out. We want you to make sense of that in a sick versus not sick, top-down kind of management plan. I really would echo what Dr. Pomp said about like venture a plan. Take your best guess at a plan. If you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know, but all 5 of us get into the position every shift where we don't really know, but we have to do something. And so reason through that. And that's the rest of your residency and the rest of your career is reasoning through it. And the last thing is if you make a kid cry, you're just going to get sent home from shift. So no, that's not true. I make kids cry all day long.
Kids crying are good, right?
Crying kids are better than quiet kids, correct?
So I think we have a couple of minutes before we wanted to start the breakout sessions. And we wanted to take this opportunity to open it up for kind of just general questions for all of our program APDs and directors from the audience. Obviously, we're going to have more directed questions during the breakout sessions, but this is kind of an opportunity to just ask general questions. So if you guys know how to use the raise hand feature, or we're monitoring the chat and we can field questions that way, if any of our participants would like to ask questions before we go into breakouts.
If one of you is thinking about it, there's a chance that there's like 10 other students thinking about it. So don't be shy.
All right, it looks like the first hand I saw was from Lo Cantu. Would you like to ask your question?
Hi, I'm Lo. So with the COPA guidelines, and I'm unfortunately away from Arizona for medical school, but we were told that we weren't allowed to do audition internships because our home institution has an emergency medicine rotation that we're required to do. And so I was just wondering if that is like an accurate interpretation of COPA guidelines, or if you are accepting medical students who do have a home EM rotation.
I can maybe answer that if that's all right with you, Geoff. So I am the co-clerkship and site director for Valleywise. We are accepting applications from outside rotators. The spots are very limited. And there's also, it's just a very limited spots. And it's tough to say that out because there is still it's not a for sure recommendation, right? It's not that you can't apply and that we can't accept them, but there is the guidance that we try to minimize it, and spots are already slim as is. So I don't want to get your hopes up and say, hey, we can definitely offer you a rotation here, but it's definitely not against the guidelines. There's slim spots right now.
We have pretty limited spots at Tucson U of A also, because it's now a required clerkship for all the U of A students here. So we have a fairly small number this year. And the guidelines that are out there from the physician accountability group basically says you can do one away rotation. I would say do not try to game the system and do more than one away rotation in some way or another, and then have a couple different away slows, because I think everyone's going to look at that with kind of a crooked eye going, someone's trying to work the system here. So don't try and do that.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, when I see someone that has a home institute, I kind of expect them to have done a rotation. So there is some preference given to those that don't, to be able to kind of hopefully even the playing field. So again, it kind of sucks for people that are like, hey, I'm having a home institute, but I went away from med school and I want to rotate back in Phoenix because that's where I'm from, et cetera. And there is some understanding about that. And that's something that we talked about previously, that you can bring up in, say, your personal statement and what have you during your application, because during a normal year, there's much higher probability that you'll be able to come and do an audition rotation with us. And unfortunately, like I said, the preference given the COPA recommendations is that we try to even the playing field and offer those to people that don't have that opportunity to have a home program. So that's, again, why our slim spots are already made even slimmer.
Thank you.
So next we're going to take one more hand and then we'll get the chat questions. We'll try to get everyone. John Michael, I think I saw your hand next.
Great. Hi, I'm John Michael. Thank you all for being here on a Saturday, donating your time. Just quickly, big picture, I was just curious about how you anticipated your program's interview, especially since we were sort of entirely virtual for a year, how you're going to be sort of incorporating that with a combination in person as we sort of move forward from here.
I'm really eager to hear what you guys say.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we don't know. Trying to see what happens with the pandemic, what the guidance is. Honestly, still trying to figure it all out.
I think what all of us would love to do is start to incorporate in-person interviews again. And I think that we are waiting to sort of see how that looks. I will say, however, I think that we're already starting to have discussions about incorporating some dates that may just be virtual to allow for people that, hey, you know, I can't travel, or I am just unable to get there, to really see if we can almost do a little bit of both. While it definitely is not ideal, I think that frankly there were a couple of benefits to doing our virtual, some of the virtual experiences this application cycle. So I think likely, ideally, we'll be offering both types of opportunities.
There's a lot of questions out there about equity. You know, does someone have, you know, an advantage having an in-person interview versus a virtual interview? And if you can do it early in the season where it's only virtual. So again, there's just so many questions still up in the air that we don't have a firm plan yet, but we would love to meet people again.
Great, thank you.
So I just kind of wanted to segue off of the previous thing about spots for audition rotations. I would just throw in a plug for looking for kind of tangential EM experiences. So we offer an ultrasound rotation as well. So if you're not able to get into our EM clerkship rotation, you can apply for the ultrasound rotation, or let's say there's a Peds experience rotation, EM rotation. I would recommend, if you're not able to get that core, you know, clerkship and maybe get a typical slow, you can still, if you're doing a, say, ultrasound or Peds EM or tox or what have you, that is kind of tangentially related, especially at our program where you're very much involved with our ultrasound faculty, fellows, and residents that are on the ultrasound month as their intern year. We aren't able to offer you the typical slow, but you can get the kind of the off slow from that rotation as well. So be on the lookout for those experiences. Like I said, it's not going to get you the normally weighted slow, but it's definitely can add some weight, and it's a good experience. And it's another way to kind of experience a program without getting, you know, one of those coveted audition rotation spots.
Thank you so much, everyone. I know that there are other questions in the chat, and Mr. Kondapalli also had a question, but we want to make sure that y'all get a break before we start the breakout sessions, because we've been sitting here for a couple of hours now, and I know that could be a challenge.